I got home from a 14-hour shift, turned into my driveway, and my garage door wouldn't even open all the way. It stopped halfway like it hit something solid. And when I ducked under it, 2 mud-caked work trucks were sitting inside my garage like they owned the place. Oil smell, wet dirt, fresh tire tracks on my floor. And standing right there with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes was Brenda Halston from the Homeowners Association, like she'd been waiting for me to notice. At first my brain tried to make it make sense. Maybe a neighbor asked. Maybe a contractor got the wrong address. Maybe my uncle did something before he passed and never told me. Anything, except it wasn't supposed to be this. Then Brenda clicked her pen like she was marking me absent in class. "Hi, Jack," she said, calm as a weather report. "We had to enact emergency protocol." Emergency protocol. I looked from her to the trucks, then back. "Those are in my garage." "How did they get in my garage?" She shrugged. Like I asked why the sun came up. "Road resurfacing. The city's closing the street. These vehicles needed a secure place. The HOA has master keys for situations like this. Community welfare." That word, master keys, hit me harder than the trucks did, because I hadn't given anyone a key. I didn't even know there was a key besides mine. "You broke into my house," I said, and my voice sounded too steady for how hot my face felt. Brenda made a little face like I was being dramatic. "It's not a break-in when it's authorized. You're being difficult, Jack. Everyone has to cooperate sometimes." I didn't move for a second. My hands were clenched so tight I could feel my nails. I wanted to start yelling right there, right then, because she was talking like my property was a community storage unit. But I've learned something the hard way in life. The second you lose your temper, people start acting like you lost your argument. So I went quiet, stepped past her, and took a slow look around. The trucks weren't parked carefully. They were shoved in like somebody had rushed. One had a dripping stain already forming underneath. The other had gravel scattered across the concrete like a sandbox got dumped out. I looked at Brenda again. "Whose trucks are these?" She nodded toward the driver's side doors. "Halston Construction. My husband's company. They're helping the neighborhood." Of course they were. I could feel the sarcasm rising, but I swallowed it. "Get them out." Brenda's smile tightened. "They'll be gone after the resurfacing is finished." "You're not hearing me," I said. "Get them out now. You don't have permission to be here. You don't have permission to use any key. And you definitely don't have permission to store your husband's trucks inside my garage." She took one step closer, like she was going to intimidate me on my own driveway. "Jack, if you create problems for the board can create problems for you. Fines, liens, legal action. Don't be that guy." I stared at her, this woman in a bright polo shirt with an HOA logo, talking about liens like she was reading a menu. "I'm already that guy," I said, and I walked back out. I didn't slam anything. I didn't touch her. I didn't put my hands on the trucks. I did something simpler and way more effective. I lowered the garage door, locked it, and kept the key in my pocket like it weighed 100 pounds. Brenda's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" I didn't look back. I pulled out my phone and called the non-emergency police line because I wanted this on record, not on rumor. My voice shook just a little when I gave the address, and I hated that. I hated that she'd turned my own driveway into a situation where I had to sound calm so I wouldn't be treated like the problem. While I waited, Brenda paced on the concrete like a manager who couldn't find the assistant to yell at. She kept saying community welfare and emergency protocol like she was trying to hypnotize me with the same 2 phrases. Then her tone changed. "You know you can't hold property that belongs to the association." I finally looked at her. "Those trucks are not association property. They are being used for association purposes. That's not how ownership works," I said. "Also, you just admitted you used a key to get inside my garage. That's trespassing at best." She rolled her eyes. "Call your lawyer then." The officer who showed up was a younger guy, polite, tired-looking, the kind of tired you get from dealing with nonsense all day. He listened while Brenda tried to take over the conversation, and he did that thing where he nodded without agreeing. Finally, he raised a hand and said, "Ma'am, how did the trucks get inside his garage?" Brenda lifted her chin. "Master key." The officer's eyebrows moved like they had a life of their own. He looked at me. "You give her permission to enter." "No," I said. "I don't even know what master key she's talking about." Brenda jumped in fast. "The HOA maintains keys for emergency access. It's standard." The officer didn't argue. He just asked, "Do you have that in writing?" Policy clause anything. Brenda hesitated just long enough. It's understood. The officer exhaled like someone had handed him homework. Okay, here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to call understood permission to enter someone's property. Brenda's face shifted, and for the first time she looked less like a queen and more like someone who just realized the room didn't belong to her. The officer asked me if I wanted to file a report. I said yes. He asked if I wanted to press for trespass. I said yes again because the moment you let someone slide, they come back bolder. Brenda scoffed. This is unbelievable. The officer looked at her and said, No, ma'am. What's unbelievable is you used a key to put vehicles inside his garage without his consent. She snapped, Those trucks need to stay protected. He said, Then protect them somewhere you're allowed to be. When he told her the vehicles had to be removed, she tried to argue that I was holding them hostage. The officer said something I'll never forget, quiet, blunt, and final. You left them here. That's on you. They called a tow company. Brenda made phone calls like she was calling in air support. When the tow truck arrived, she stood too close, pointing, complaining, trying to direct traffic on my driveway like it was her job. I watched the first truck get pulled out, and instead of relief, I felt this weird hollowness. Because it wasn't just two trucks. It was the idea that someone thought they could step into my life, use a key I didn't know existed, and treat my home like a storage shed. That night I sat at my kitchen table with the police report number on a sticky note. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I stared at the note like it was going to tell me what to do next. And I'll be honest, there was a moment where my mind went dark. Not maybe I'm wrong, not that. More like, what if this is just how it is here? What if the HOA is a machine and I'm one guy with a mortgage and a job and not enough sleep? I thought about selling. I thought about leaving. I thought about how much easier it would be to hand the keys to a realtor and never hear the words community standards again. Then I remembered something my aunt said when she left me this place. People only take what you let them take. So I got up, opened the hallway closet, and pulled out the old box of documents I'd barely touched since moving in. Deed paperwork, survey maps, yellowed envelopes, things nobody looks at until they have to. And buried in that stack was the original survey from when the neighborhood was first built. Clear lines, measurements, stamped and dated. I compared it to the recent HOA plat they had posted online, the one Brenda loved to wave around like scripture. That's when I saw it. A 15-foot strip along my side boundary, 15 feet, that the HOA drawings conveniently treated like common area. But the original survey didn't. The original survey said that strip belonged to this lot, my lot. 15 feet doesn't sound like much until you realize what sits on it, part of the landscaped entrance, a little chunk of the community garden, even the edge of that decorative fountain they brag about in the newsletter. It wasn't just overreach, it was a habit, a long, comfortable habit of assuming nobody would ever check. The next morning I paid for an independent surveyor, not a friend of Brenda, not someone from the neighborhood, a professional who doesn't care who glares at him as long as the math is right. When his equipment confirmed it, I felt something I hadn't felt since this started traction, like my feet were finally on solid ground. Brenda didn't stop, of course. She doubled down like every Karen with a clipboard does when reality shows up. I got a violation notice taped to my door. Obstruction of community operations. Then another hostile conduct toward board members. Then a threat about legal remedies. It was almost impressive how quickly she tried to rewrite the story where she was the victim. I didn't argue with the paper. I didn't call her. I did two things. First, I hired a property attorney, the kind who looks bored until you mention unauthorized entry, then suddenly starts taking notes. Second, I requested the association's key policy in writing, along with any documentation showing they were authorized to maintain master keys to private homes. Because if that existed, it would be in the bylaws. And if it didn't, that mattered. Brenda called a special HOA meeting. Of course she did. She wanted an audience. She wanted to put me on display. I walked into the clubhouse with a folder under my arm and my attorney beside me. The room was packed, neighbors whispering, folding chairs, squeaking, the smell of cheap coffee and perfume. Brenda sat at the front table like a judge tapping her pen, waiting to control the room. She started with a speech about cooperation and safety. She talked about how my actions endangered the resurfacing schedule, how I was disruptive, how the board couldn't allow one homeowner to interfere. Then she looked at me like she expected me to apologize. I didn't. I stood up and said, before anyone votes on anything tonight, I'd like to submit evidence. Brenda tried to cut me off. We're not here for... My attorney spoke calm and smooth. We are here for whatever is relevant, and criminal trespass is relevant. That word criminal hit the room like a dropped plate. I laid out the police report. I laid out photos of the trucks in my garage. I laid out the written admission, Brenda's own text message to a neighbor, the one where she bragged about the master key like it was a perk. Then I placed the survey on the table, the new one and the original one side by side. Brenda's face tightened. That's not... The surveyor who came with me pointed to the boundary markers like he was explaining it to a room full of adults, because he was. This line is the legal property boundary. The association landscaping extends beyond it. It has for years. One of the board members, an older guy named Phil, who always looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, leaned forward and said, "Brenda, is that true?" Brenda's voice sharpened. "That doesn't matter right now." Phil blinked. "It matters a lot, actually." The room started to shift. You could feel it. People weren't whispering about me anymore. They were staring at Brenda. A woman in the second row stood up and said, "My shed got inspected last year." Brenda said she had authority to enter my backyard. Another guy raised his hand. "She threatened to lean on me because my trash can was visible for 2 hours." It wasn't chaos. It was worse for Brenda, orderly outrage. One story after another, calm voices, real experiences, no exaggeration. Just patterns. Brenda tried to regain control. She banged her little gavel like it still worked. "This meeting is out of order." My attorney didn't raise his voice. He just said, "No, ma'am. Your authority is out of order." Then the deputy walked in. Not because I called for drama. Because my attorney had filed the trespass complaint properly and the deputy had followed up. Brenda's name was on the report. The master key admission was on record, and the deputy had a job to do. He asked Brenda to step outside. Brenda stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "This is harassment. This is retaliation." The deputy didn't argue. He didn't need to. He asked again, polite, firm. She looked around the room, expecting someone to rescue her, expecting the crowd to snap back into line. But nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Not even Phil. She walked out with the deputy, and right before the door shut, I saw it something small but real. Not a theatrical downfall, not a movie villain moment, just the expression of someone realizing the rules they've been swinging like a bat actually apply to them too. The board took a vote that night. Emergency removal from duties pending investigation. Access privileges suspended. Key inventory demanded. Legal counsel contacted. Brenda's clipboard didn't look so powerful anymore. I drove home slow. My garage door opened clean quiet like it was supposed to. The concrete still had faint marks from the tires, and I knew it would take a scrub to get the stains out. But the space felt like mine again. And as I turned off the light, I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a homeowner who finally did the one thing that scares people like Brenda the most, kept records, stayed calm, and refused to be pushed off my own property. Lesson learned. When someone in an HOA tells you they have authority, make them prove it on paper.